Just a couple days ago, I had a really fun time talking with my friend Wouter from the Netherlands. We spent approximately 2.5 hours just BSing about all sorts of stuff and recording it so that you can listen in and just be entertained by the conversation. When we started, I asked Wouter, I was like, "What is there anything you don't want to talk about?" Because it's a good thing to ask people. And he said didn't really want to talk about politics. He's not really into politics. Funny enough, we ended up talking about politics quite a bit, but nothing too one-sided. Just kind of talking about more of the philosophy and maybe speculating a little bit about what might possibly be moving things around, the way that they get moved around. In the second half of this podcast, Wouter started telling some stories which are just fantastic stories. For a 23-year-old man, he's very talented and has some really incredible experiences. And he's good at telling these stories. You can tell that he's told these stories before. So enjoy the show and let me know what you think in the comments. Wouter has his own podcast in the Netherlands, but it's in Dutch, so us English speakers won't have an easy time listening to it. But at one point, he'll probably do some episodes in English, which will be really cool. But it's the most up and coming podcast in the Netherlands, and so if you happen to understand Dutch, definitely check it out. Yeah, I guess that's all. Enjoy the show.
Hey, do you have your dog with you?
Yep.
Cool.
What's up, bud? Hey. Come on. Come on. Oh, you're gonna come up this side? Come on. Can you see him?
No.
Come here. He's like, I don't want to. Come on. There he is.
There he is. What kind of dog is it?
He's a Mexican street dog.
Wow.
There he is.
Wow, he's cute.
He's like, if you mix 100 dogs together, you'll get him. But I call him that because if you type that into Google, Mexican street dog, a dog that looks just like him pops up.
How did you find that out?
I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what kind of dog he was, looking at thousands of pictures.
He's cute.
Casey and I adopted him like a year and a half ago. He came from San Diego, so there's a good possibility he's actually from Mexico.
Wow.
And from the moment we got him, he like doesn't bark. He's potty trained. He's super sweet, obedient, just like the best dog on the planet. But
Man, he looks so cute.
he's a handsome boy.
Yeah. How old is he?
He's got to be about 5 now.
I was gonna say, like, he looks pretty young.
Yeah, everyone thinks he's a puppy. All right, I'm gonna go. Come on. Good boy. Yeah, don't tell anybody he's here. He's not supposed to be here at the office.
Of course, it's an office space. No dogs allowed.
They didn't tell me that when I moved in, so.
Well, is it in your contract?
Nope.
I mean, he can be there then, right?
That's what I said.
That's kind of how it works.
Yeah, I'm only here for another week though, so I don't really care.
Yeah, for another week?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you leaving?
The owner's selling the place, and so everyone's got to move out. And I don't think I'm going to get another one just because I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing. I might be staying in Mexico for a while.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So with the beer and pancakes, so you're going to Mexico anyway and might just stay there a little longer?
Yep, exactly. So Americans, when they go, you automatically get a 6-month visa. So
cool.
The plan right now is to stay for 2 or 3 weeks, and then depending on the political climate and what's going on with COVID and whatnot, I might just stay there.
Well, that's pretty cool, man. Like, but haven't you been there before? Haven't you lived there before?
Yeah, I lived in Mexico City for like 4 months or 5 months and traveled around a little bit. But this event's in Puerto Vallarta, so it's like a little ocean town. And I heard that the mayor actually owns a lot of the hotels, so they're not really doing lockdowns.
No conflict of interest there.
Yeah. But from what I've heard, I haven't read into it, but other people have been saying that they have like, they go above and beyond, keeping everything clean and safe. And each room comes with 2 free COVID tests and all that kind of stuff. So I even heard there was like, they take your temperature like every 100 feet or something like that. So we'll just have to see.
Real vacation vibe.
Yeah. You're just sitting there out on the beach. They come take your temperature every like 10 minutes.
Are you excited to go?
Oh, yeah, man. Just like the summit last year, that was like the highlight of my year for sure. And so I don't expect this to be any different.
I mean, like what you told me before, it sounds like there's going to be less people here, right?
Yeah, there's 50 tickets. So
Wow.
50 or less.
Yeah, so it's like I like the summit, but with bigger groups, then there's always going to be like smaller groups forming.
Mhm.
So obviously, you and me, Rob, Jordan, Game, Dan, Bradley, like everybody coming together. But like if you have 50 people or less, then you probably get a chance to talk to everybody if you wanted to.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's funny thinking about the summit because we had our like little mastermind group, and then we have like the WhatsApp group that had like 50 people in it or something. And I just
Yeah,
wonder, is like, were there other WhatsApp groups, like 2 other ones that we just didn't know about?
man, probably not. I think we had the biggest one because you were the designated driver. Like you
Mm.
had the car ready to go anywhere. Like that was so convenient. And I think that was why we were probably like the facilitators of the biggest WhatsApp group because we had the means to go anywhere people wanted. So that was
Yeah,
pretty good.
we had a really good synergy going on, like we all planned on staying together anyways. Rob was like creating groups left and right. Jordan was going out and inviting everybody.
Yeah.
I had the Suburban, so we played it right, and I plan on doing a similar thing at this event. I'm already planning on getting an Airbnb with at least 3 other people, but hopefully a few more. And I'm gonna set that up, and then if no one else has, I'll set up like a WhatsApp group and all that kind of stuff. Because there's something to be said about being like the hub, at the center of the hub.
Absolutely.
You get to know everybody a lot better and help them get to know each other. That's pretty big.
So what are you hoping to get out of this one? Or are you going in with any expectations?
My only goal is to make a few more solid friends like I did last time. So, like us 7 in the mastermind group, like that's pretty cool that we're still, you know, just as close a year later. And there's been a few more people from the summit that I talk to on a regular basis. So just more of that. Um, a bunch of people that I connected with at the summit are going to be there. So that'll be just like reinforcing those bonds. And, it's pretty cool. It's a weird thing. Went for a walk the other night, smoked a little bit. And I was just thinking, like, I don't know, I'm staying at my dad's right now, and that's where I grew up. So, and I don't know really any of our neighbors. And I'm walking around, it's like, I don't know any of these neighbors. And all of a sudden I saw like these beams shooting out of the houses. And these beams represented all the like internet, the people that these people in the house are connected to via internet. They're going all over the place, but they're not going to their neighbors. They're going somewhere far away. And that's kind of like where our world is moving to, is people being connected to people elsewhere. And from my travels and the summit and whatnot, I have more friends in other countries than I do in United States.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. But I see what you mean. Like it's so easy nowadays to stay in touch with people. Like even with Game being in Thailand. Like we could both send them a message and stay in contact and have the call every 2 weeks on Zoom and see each other, talk to each other. So like there's really no barriers to contact anymore. But I still think it's healthy to have friends you can see in real life as well.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
that's super important. But like it's so amazing because like we obviously met at the summit, and that's what I really like about the internet. Like whatever you're into, there's always going to be a group of people that's also into that as well. So I really like entrepreneurship and obviously reading the Millionaire Fast Lane and that mindset. Then going on to the forum, discovering there's like 60,000 people with similar mindsets, and seeing the event, like, well, there's probably going to be a couple hundred people there that share the same values. So going there, meeting people, staying in touch, and it's like it's so easy now to have friends that are completely different from you.
Oh no, internet's cracking out. You there?
Yep. Is it my connection or is it yours?
I'm not sure.
Otherwise, I'll go on my hotspot just in case, because the internet really isn't that great here. So
Is that a Netherlands thing or just your house?
um, it's just like we have like a central Wi-Fi in this apartment complex. It's like super slow. So in order for me to get faster internet, I really have to get my own personal connection, which is going to be like 60 euros a month. So I don't really feel the need. But especially now working from home, it's just isn't that great.
You
I'll
think
probably,
you think your company would pay for it?
well, they're gonna like reimburse us for working at home. So that's probably going to be like 20, 30 euros a month. Um, so maybe, maybe I could. So I'm gonna try and switch networks. Okay.
Okay.
See if it works. All right.
All right, we're back.
We're back.
So let's see. You were talking about just how easy it is to connect with people all over the place.
Yeah. Like doesn't really matter how like what you're into or what you value in life, there's always going to be more people out there that value the same thing. So it makes it real easy to connect with people. Like because what you said was pretty much like you can connect with anybody in the world, but you might have more connections outside of your own neighborhood, let's say. Um, but in a way it's the other way around as well. Like if you have a family or like friends that really aren't into, let's say, entrepreneurship, for example, or personal development, then you can look outside of those communities and find those people anyway. So it also opens up a lot of like new opportunities and a way to find people that kind of belong, have the same values in life as you do.
Yeah, I try to compare it to like what life must have been like before the internet. Because, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but we're all kind of limited to how many relationships we can hold at once. And, if like just going back to that walk, I'm picturing all these connections going around, but it's like, just like me, I'm so preoccupied with connecting with people far away that I don't really have time or energy to go to my neighbors and see what they're up to. But if the internet, got shut off for a week, all of a sudden all the neighbors would be coming out, they'd be talking to each other. And it's really interesting. And to build on your point of, it's so easy to find people that you have stuff in common with now. Like, I wonder what it was like, 30 years ago when it wasn't so easy. And like, then you did meet somebody that you had something in common with. And it was like, oh my God, like, this is amazing,
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like entrepreneurship, type it into Google. There's like Facebook groups and forums and events.
I mean, I think what you just said is an interesting point. Like, let's say you were in a small town, let's say 50 years ago, and you met people. You're obviously your own person. Like, you have your own values and things you find important in life. But would you like change more of yourself to fit into those groups than you would nowadays, where you can pretty much find anybody that has similar things to you, like in common. So it's almost like you don't have to change as much of who you are, because there's more people out there that are like you, which you weren't able to meet 50 years ago. So you probably had to adapt more to your own environment and probably change more of who you are, instead of being able to express who you are, because maybe wouldn't fit into the environment you were in.
Yeah, I think that's probably true in both situations. I think it's normal and natural for us to just adapt to whatever environment we're in. But you compare people 50 years ago in the United States to them people today, and the people were a lot more patriotic back then. Probably part of it could be because when they went out and interacted with other people, what they all had in common was that they were Americans. And maybe they didn't have anything else in common, but they had to find something. But nowadays, people are able to find other things in common, so they don't have to latch on to something that general.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good point. And I'm also immediately thinking about polarization. Like, we see a lot of polarization in our world today, but isn't that also because of like technology and everything making it easier to go into different tribes instead of like finding the one thing you have in common, like being American?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just think of the going on to like Reddit or Twitter and just reading people's responses. It's like you're either way over here or way over here. And then they feed off each other and build off of each other and say the same exact things, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't mean to meander into that, but I think that's probably a lot of what's going on. And last night I learned about something called Jigsaw. It's a Google thing. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay, so check it out. It's jigsaw.google.com. And it's basically, they're making and using right now an AI that like identifies misinformation online. And like when you do a Google search, it will cater the search results to like your particular bias or what they want people to think. And maybe I could phrase it differently, as they think that there's misinformation out there, and so they will purposely block that and show you things that are opposed to that or whatever. I just learned about it last night, but it's pretty crazy. They have a little homepage you can go through and kind of read their mission, and it's pretty much exactly that. It's like changing the direction of the world with search results and stuff like that, all through the use of AI.
Man, that's scary stuff.
I know it's pretty scary, because how do we know that they know what's right, or that their computer knows what's right?
Yeah.
But you can go to like Google, and if you type in anything political, you can look at it on Google and then look at it on like DuckDuckGo or another alternative search engine, and the search results will be different, or there'll be certain things that won't show on Google that will show on DuckDuckGo. And it's starting to become mainstream knowledge that that's a thing, but they've been doing that for a while. And it just makes me wonder, when I talk to people that are like really, really deep into a certain tribe, It's like, what have you been reading?
Yeah, I think. Did you watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
No, I haven't.
Oh, that's pretty. They made a pretty interesting point. Like, and I think this is pretty general knowledge. But if you go online and watch a video about baby dogs, like puppies, and then you watch another video and you get suggested more videos and more videos and more videos, and it's almost like a sinkhole. You get sucked into like puppy videos. But it's the same thing with a political ideology. Like if you only watch PragerU videos, like let's say, um, then you get suggested more PragerU videos, and it just keeps on going, and it kind of pulls you into that ideology because it says, okay, you like this, then you'll probably like more of this. Instead of showing you like the now this videos, I think that's more of a, or like the Vox videos, that's more left leaning. They won't show you those as much because they know you don't like it. So, but of course that's a big problem because you don't get news from both sides. You get sucked into one side, and it further pulls you into that direction. And I don't think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree that that's not a good thing. I haven't, I don't know this for sure, but I've heard a lot of people say it, that people on the right tend to watch like both sides of news more than people on the left will only watch left news. And I mean, that would be easy because there seems to be a lot more left leaning mainstream news channels. Um, but,
But
that would,
don't you, like, how do you look at, like, there's some clips on YouTube, like from talk shows in the 70s and in the 80s. And there's like people with two different views, like opposing views, but they're super respectful in how they debate each other and how they make their points and trying to find common ground. And I feel like nowadays there really isn't that much discourse anymore between these two sides. Um, but it's more like, okay, I believe this, you believe this, there is no common ground. Like there's a, you're wrong because of this, you're wrong because of this. So I also feel like there's less discourse now, even though we have the internet where there you can have pretty much discourse with anybody you like. But I feel like we don't really look for common ground anymore. We just look at things that affirm our views.
yeah, I wonder if that ties into what we were talking about earlier with it being so much easier to find people that think like you, that you can go into these groups and really just hammer those points home, where back in those days you were talking about before the internet, these two people talking to each other, they aren't sure how many people agree with them. And so they're really trying to stress their ideas and get to the truth somehow, where nowadays it's like, I think the truth is this. If I go over here, we'll just all talk about that and how true that is. And it snowballs into like the other side being evil and all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we also look at those ideologies and like people build an identity around them. So let's say you get sucked into one side of the like the debate, let's say politics, you get sucked into the left side of politics. Like you only watch that kind of content, you only talk with people that affirm your views that are also on the left side of the political spectrum. Then if you get confronted with a piece of evidence that kind of debunks what you believe, then that doesn't only attack like your views, but it also attacks a piece of your identity because you've identified yourself, like you've built your identity around being someone that's liberal, left leaning. So that also makes it difficult for people to change because it kind of attacks like a piece of their identity. So that's much more dangerous than just talking about ideas. You're actually getting defensive because it's now part of your identity and something you've built your identity around. So like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also very dangerous and something we see now. Like, and that's why people get defensive instead of being open to discussing those kinds of ideas.
Yeah, totally. They even call it identity politics. That's like, if you are this race and this gender, then you are automatically put into this group. and must think these thoughts and be guilty of these transgressions. That seems to be being pushed right now. And it makes me question, like, not all politicians, not all media, because, if I'm honest with myself, I have to accept the fact that we're all just humans and we're completely fallible. And even the people in the highest positions are still just people. But there are a lot of people that really understand this stuff and have studied it a lot and have looked throughout history. And even they might be pushing this kind of thing, there's like the old adage, divide and conquer, right? Like, there definitely seem to be some forces, at least in the United States, that are wanting to divide people. It's definitely working, whether they're trying to or not.
Yeah, and I think it also goes back to what you were saying about like the whole Google jigsaw thing. Like, is Google the right like entity to decide what's right and what's wrong morally, and what's like something that's like with Donald Trump being banned from Twitter and pretty much all social media, like, all right, like he's like, regardless of what you think of his politics and everything, like he pretty much lost his voice on the internet. And like he got banned from one platform and then pretty much all the other platforms followed. And
Mm-hmm.
like I think even Shopify banned him. So
Yeah,
it's like there's,
I even heard, like Bank of America or something. Some bank closed his accounts.
yeah, so it's like, okay, is that based on something, or is that just because we think what he does isn't right, and like, so that's why we ban him? Like, is that a rational decision based on facts and rules, regulations, laws, and everything, or is that more based on emotion? That, okay, if Twitter bans him, then Instagram probably feels like, oh shit, now we have to do something as well. Like, which side of the spectrum? How do we want to be seen by people? Do we want to be seen as the one party, like one entity or social media platform that allows him to have a voice online, or are we going to go with jump on the bandwagon and ban him from our services as well? Like, I think that's a scary thing. Like, what's actually behind those decisions, and is there any like, is there anybody actually checking, like, is this legal what they are doing? So regardless of his politics.
Yeah, and besides the point of why they're, why they make those decisions and if they're right, let's just look at the consequences. So people on the left, they typically, from what I've heard, don't go out and research and don't look for opposing information as much as people on the right. I think most people in general probably don't go out looking to prove themselves wrong. But let's say that there's a bad person on Twitter that's gaining a following, that's saying dangerous things. What happens when you remove him from Twitter is he doesn't go away. He just goes somewhere else and continues building on what he's doing, but now everyone's in the dark and has no idea what he's doing. So it's like, I see it further dividing people, and then allowing people to be blindsided when the guy comes back 2 years later with this huge political party or whatever, and they've just had no idea because he was banned from the platforms they use. It just seems super counterproductive. If you actually think he's dangerous, it seems to me you would want to get his ideas out there so that you can prove them wrong and show how wrong they are.
Yeah, exactly. If it's based on facts and figures, you should have no problem like debunking those statements, because, well, it's all there if it's based on facts and figures.
Yeah, that's what I'm not an overly political person. I just assume the truth lies somewhere in the middle, just about with everything. But over the last couple of years with this Trump phenomenon, the media definitely had a hard bent against him, and there was like a few times where I would hear somebody doing commentary about a couple articles, and these articles were talking about what Trump said in a speech. And one of them was like, oh, he called dead veterans losers and suckers. And then there was another one where he was like saying he hated Muslims or something like that. And I was like, huh, those are pretty extreme statements to make. Like, I'm going to go listen to the speech. And then I listened to it, and it's like not at all what he said. You know, it was completely taken out of context. And that happened a few times. And it was after that, I just didn't feel like I could trust, you know, what the media was saying about anything, because I had personally caught them in a few just complete lies and fabrications. And then during like the presidential debates, Biden was saying the exact same headlines, you know, like the same things that I had already debunked on my own. And it was just like, that's just kind of fishy, you know. Because it's like you said, if your ideas are right, you should be able to stand on their merit and prove them right. But that's not the game these days. The game is like censor and ban and cancel culture. And it's just, for the people doing the canceling, it seems incredibly dangerous, because it's once there are other people are canceled, who's next? It's going to
Yeah,
come
it
to them
just
next.
like one thing I get from what you're saying, then at least it sounds like it's become way more emotional instead of rational. Like cancel culture to me sounds sounds extremely emotional. Like somebody says something that triggers a reaction in certain people, and therefore they should be banned, or their voice should be taken away. Like it sounds way more emotional than you'd expect and then you would like
Well,
at least to me.
it's almost like it's not what like somebody says or does that triggers it. It's the reaction that people hear about. You know, it's not watching the Trump speech that pissed people off. It was reading and hearing about all the articles about how he was saying all this racist stuff and calling veterans losers and all this stuff. Now that you read that and you hear it over and over and over again on different channels and all over the place, political figures saying the same thing. I think it almost like implants a memory in people's heads that's like, wow, this guy said this. That's super messed up. And those are messed up things to say, but he didn't actually say those things. And I've actually been researching a guy named Alan Dulles. He was the CIA director during, I think, Nixon, or no, Reagan. And there's like a bunch of conspiracy theories about him, like books about him, that he had something to do with JFK and all this stuff. But the CIA has openly studied like how to disinform the public. And this guy, Alan Dulles, was quoted with saying, we will know our job is done when everything the American public thinks is a lie.
Hmm.
So, you know, I'm not making any assertions here, but it ties into what we're talking about is people are they're taking bold action on ideas that aren't their own and that they haven't proven themselves. And
Yeah, and I think that's also because, well, everything is so um, I, I don't know how to say it in English, but it's like everything's so quick nowadays. Like we want instant gratification. We're on social media. We read one headline and we form our opinion based on that headline. So it's like this person said this person said this. It's like, wow, that's terrible. But like if you dig in, then there's probably going to be nuances, or there might not have like interpretations of what someone said. Like it's not it not even being a direct quote, just someone hears that in what they're saying instead of what they're actually saying. But people don't really look behind that initial headline, because it's so much easier to just form your opinion on something you see in front of you and then move on. But like those things build up. So if you keep reading, like this person said this person said this, then they said this, then they said this, it's like, wow, that's terrible. But if you don't go behind those headlines, then you never get the full picture.
yeah, absolutely. It's like it's hard to even keep up these days with the news cycle. And it's spawned like this whole industry of commentators. You know, it's like I don't get my news from news channels anymore. Like I have a few commentators that I listen to and they condense it all down. You know, they're like, I looked into this, this, and this, you know. But as time goes on, the less I take anything at face value. You know, I just assume that whatever I'm hearing is not completely true. And so these days I try to look less at what people are saying happen and stuff and just look at the results of what's already happened, you know, because whatever's happened where we are today is it's there, you know, like all the COVID rules and laws and who's in the presidency and just all that kind of stuff. So, you know,
Uh,
it's a weird time, and I don't really fault people for getting swept up in the identity politics and that kind of stuff because it's easy. It's like the easiest thing you can do to just, you know, I want to be part of this group. This is what that group believes. I believe it too, wholeheartedly, and then that gives me status in that group, you know.
and a sense of purpose, belonging. Like you now belong to a group of people. You feel a certain connection. Um, that's why I choose not to focus on politics or anything outside of my control in general. Like obviously the news is there, but I check it in the morning to see if there's anything weird happening. Like I saw Larry King died yesterday or today, so like that's obviously extremely sad. But then I move on. Like I don't think about him dying all day long. I don't let it like evoke that much emotion, or like I don't let it ruin my day. Like I just look at it, okay, I know it now, and then I move on and focus on things I can control in my life. And that gives me a lot of, like, I don't know, it just gives me a lot of clarity in my life in general. Like I don't really watch the news, I don't really follow politics, because like with everything going on, let's say you look back on the past year, like how much actually impacted your life, like how much has your life actually changed based on everything going on. Like if you were to believe everything in the news, like your life would be miserable. Like with everything going on, like this is happening, there's a fire here, this is happening, but how much does it actually affect your life? And it usually doesn't. So that's why I personally focus on what I can control and what I want to do, and kind of ignore the noise that's out there. But it's difficult because I get why people want to follow the news and stay informed, because it's also kind of like fear of missing out. Like, what if there's something important going on today that I didn't hear about? And
Mm.
just it's so easy to get swept up in, like you were saying.
Yeah, I think the key word there is easy. Um, I'm reading Jordan Peterson's first book, Maps of Meaning, right now. And in the preface, he talks about when he was younger and he got swept up into the socialist ideology and he joined the Socialist Party and he was doing all this stuff. And he he would go to these functions and he found himself like really respecting and admiring the conservatives because they were hardworking, successful, you know, like a really just put together people. Where the people on his side that were all they really had was their ideology. They didn't. Most of them didn't finish school. They didn't work. You know, they were really dead set on this ideology and wanting the world to change, starting with other people. And if you've ever listened to his stuff, you can tell that that really made an impact on him because his whole thing is personal responsibility.
Exactly.
And I think that really ties in with entrepreneurship because you can't you can't expect anybody else to do your entrepreneurial journey for you. Like it's all on you. And so it really forces you to focus inwards on what you're doing and what you can control. And so I think that's like a saving grace for people in that world.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, if you don't do the work, nobody's going to do it for you. So if you decide to lay on the couch all day, you make $0. Like if let's say you get paid an hourly wage as a consultant, like if you don't consult, you don't make any money. So like you obviously feel the impact of what you do, the consequences of your inactions. But like that forces you to get the belief or be aware of the fact that if I don't do this, then nothing will get done. And it kind of enforces personal responsibility. But personal responsibility also gives a sense of control. Like if you know that you can do certain things and get certain outcomes, then that also gives a certain sense of control in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's powerful as well. Like I feel like in general, a lot of people don't feel like they have any control over their lives. Like it
Yeah.
just life is happening to them, and they're just here to endure the consequences and just get through the day. And like that's, I think that's pretty. I wouldn't say sad, but like it's a shame that people feel that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's funny. Like everything we talk about is like really ties together a lot. Um, there's a certain attitude in my country, at least the U.S., that a lot of people want the government to take care of them. You know, we had lockdowns for a long time. A lot of people are out of work. They're on unemployment. They're not paying rent. Like they're already being taken care of, and they're almost being forced in that situation where you can't go to work, but we'll take care of you. And they're like, cool, just keep on taking care of me. And the benefit of that is it's easy and you have no responsibility for anything. But as Peterson would say, the consequence is a meaningless existence because meaning comes from actually being responsible for yourself and what's going on around you. So, man, I see it. It's, you know, everything's like a pendulum, and the way that things are swinging now, I think there's going to be a lot of suffering that, especially that people don't really expect to come.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on, like, this might be unrelated, but what are your thoughts on universal basic income?
Um, I think it's a bad idea because of what I just said. You know, it's like the problem with all like socialist ideas when it comes to politics. Like I 100% want everyone to have free healthcare and free education. I would love it if everyone made 10 grand a month, but that money has to come from somewhere, and it comes from whoever's producing. And production is what makes the world go round. If nobody's producing anything, nobody's consuming anything. And when you have something like social universal basic income, you know, where does that money come from? Well, it's coming from the producers, and the producers are going to be de-incentivized to produce because their taxes will be higher. They won't get as much rewards for their effort. So what I see is eventually everybody's on universal basic income, but they have to be forced to produce because someone's got to do it. And so you end up with a bunch of people being forced to do things that they really don't want to do. And another word for that is slavery. So it's kind of like a one-way ticket to slavery that's really cool in the beginning, but as time goes on, you know, your income goes down, down, down until you're just getting enough to survive. And now you're being forced to do a bunch of labor that you wouldn't really want to do. So that's
Yeah,
my
I think
thoughts
it's,
on it.
yeah, I think that's interesting. And I think you make a very good point about the producers and the consumers. Like they're tied together in a way. And like like there was a Democrat running for president. I don't know if you've heard of him, Andrew Yang. And he
Mm-hmm.
basically ran on universal basic income. And his whole thing was like you have all these uh, like like unbelievably big companies like Apple, like Amazon, like Netflix, Google, like all these tech companies that basically like it's basically a conglomerate of wealth. Like all the wealth goes there, and small businesses could just get decimated because you can buy anything on Amazon nowadays. So why would you go to your local bookstore if you can buy it on Amazon and have it the next day? Um, so his whole argument was that you need something to balance that out. You need something to redistribute that wealth that just like conglomerating in those few companies and get it to other people, because otherwise you end up with people not consuming because they simply don't have the money. It's just like it kind of triggered a thought in me, like, okay, why wouldn't we have universal basic income, or why would we have universal basic income? And wouldn't it just be inevitable if these companies keep growing and these small businesses just get decimated? Like, would that be something that's a viable solution to a situation like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like we have to take actions that deal with the problems we have today. And like what the idea I just expressed, it's kind of like an in general kind of idea. It doesn't really tackle any of the problems we have today. It's just in general, this is how things work. But let's just talk about what's happened this year. Like Andrew Yang came and had this idea, and here we are, however many months later, and we're completely flipped the other way. Small businesses are getting decimated, and these big tech companies are growing exponentially. And one could even argue that these big tech companies are actually kind of joining forces with the government to be like a system, basically a fascist system. That's the definition of fascism, is corporations and government combining. So the tech companies, they have a monopoly or monopolies, and that's a problem. In capitalism, we try to not have monopolies. But I can't say exactly what's happened, but I can see the value in having these tech companies be so powerful, especially for like intelligence agencies and stuff. It's like a massive data collector about everybody. And so if I was the director of the CIA or something, and I was watching and these people wanted to demonopolize these tech companies, I'd be like, nah, we don't want that to happen. That's going to curb our data gathering. And so, the way that politics is going, it seems like universal basic income is being used as a tool to like pacify people and distract them from the fact that these companies are getting so powerful that it's like nearing irreversibility. Like they're just so powerful that the average person is just powerless next to them. And like I said, I'd be cool if everyone just got 10 grand handed to them every month. But I don't want to, like, as an entrepreneur, as someone that's personally responsible, I don't want to have to depend on someone else, especially like a government that is typically not really great at doing anything that they do, right?
Yeah, I like that. I like that approach. Your thoughts on that? Basically, sure, it's nice to get that money, but you become dependent upon the government for them providing for you. And I think that's very dangerous to think about. And then also, what's scary to me is that government don't understand what these tech companies are like. They don't understand how they operate. They don't understand what they actually do. Like I don't see a 70-year-old senator being able to question a tech company about AI, like about machine learning, about like all these techniques that are evolving so quickly. Like I just don't see those people keeping those checks and balances for those companies. So I think with time you'll see that they'll just get more powerful and more powerful because government just isn't capable of understanding what these companies actually do and how they operate.
Mm-hmm. I know I remember watching this people question Zuckerberg, and one of them's like, okay, so you gather all this data. How much of it do you save? And he's like, do you even understand what gathering data means?
Yeah, yeah, and it's
But,
like there was another one that's like, okay, so how do I? So when I send an email through Facebook, and then Zuckerberg's like, Senator, you don't email through Facebook, and it's like, yeah, this is just embarrassing. Like, how do we expect those people to keep those companies accountable?
yeah,
Just
they can't, like, you know, when the average person looks around, they're using all sorts of technology that they don't understand, like in the slightest. And that's just that's just kind of the way the world works. But over the last few years, it's been really clear that these tech companies have a really left-leaning bias. And I've been asking myself, why is that? And I just come at the problem from like a business perspective. Like if I was running this company and I wanted this business to be more profitable, more powerful, more successful, like what would I do? And like right leaning ideology is typically like more individual freedom, smaller government, no monopolies, that kind of stuff, individual privacy and freedom. And those things are bad for these tech companies. Where on the flip side, left-leaning ideology is more like a collective, a bigger, stronger government, and more safety at the expense of privacy and personal liberty. And that's really good for these tech companies. So it's no surprise to me that they have a left-leaning bias because that's what's good for them, you know?
Yeah, and I think also that I think that's a great analysis. Like, I hadn't even considered that perspective, and but I also think that if you hear about these things like free education, free healthcare, like nobody, like on the surface, nobody could be opposed to free healthcare. Like who wouldn't want free healthcare? But
Mhm.
like somebody has to pay for that system, and that's what you were saying as well. And then you look into all these details and what it actually does to your taxes, for example, and then it isn't free healthcare anymore because you actually see behind the curtain, like, okay, this is how we're going to pay for it. But on the surface, those ideas sound more attractive than more of the personal responsibility type of ideas. So
Oh
no
yeah.
free education. Like, oh, yeah, I want free education. If I had to choose between paying my own education and getting a free education, like, of course I would want a free education. No, just like you're hearing in at least that's what I hear, like Americans saying, "Oh, we want to cancel student debt." Like, of course, I would want my student debt canceled because I have like 300,000 like hanging around my neck. But at the same time, like, who's going to pay for that? Those trillions of dollars in debt, like, um, the money isn't going to just fall out of the sky magically and just solve the problem. Like, it's going to be coming from somewhere. So I think what you were saying is right. And then also left leaning ideas just sounding more attractive than right leaning ideas.
Yeah. Well, there's like it's kind of common knowledge or whatever experience that people usually start out left when they're young, and then the older they get, the more right they move. Probably because they think through the problems, they understand them more, and then they realize, okay, it's not as easy as just making it free. Um, but another thing that I don't think people realize is that like the U.S. anyways is not really capitalist. And let's just look at the student debt problem. Like, why do these kids have so much debt? Well, it's a couple things. It's because the government guaranteed loans for going to college, which allowed colleges to just keep raising their prices because students were guaranteed to be able to afford it. And over time, it's just become so extremely expensive that it's asinine. And if the government wouldn't have gotten involved and made it mandatory to give these loans, then colleges would have had to compete for pricing and keep the prices competitive. That's what capitalism is. We integrated it with some socialist ideas and turned it into something else. And so if we're going to fix the student debt problem, we can't just clear off the debt today because in 10 years we're going to have the same problem again, but probably worse. Another thing about education is we have the internet now. So you're able to learn most things online for free anyway. So why don't we just scrap this expensive, inefficient education system we have now and actually move to something where it's more accessible and cheaper for everybody using the internet? That's what I would like to see. But the colleges don't want that because their money, their businesses, they've got this cash cow, they've got guaranteed loans from the government. They don't want anything to change. And these colleges are powerful institutions. They're raising generations of people. And so, all these things like tie in together. And the way that I understand it is usually from a business standpoint of if I was running this business, like what would I want to happen? And I see that that's often what's happening is those things.
Yeah, and I think that's also like what you hear a lot is like, okay, free healthcare. They also have it in Denmark or in the Netherlands. Like the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Finland, those countries are always like the highest in the happiness index. They're like, well, they have socialist or socio-democratic systems that work for them. Like their healthcare is best in the world, education is best in the world, people are the happiest. So why don't we introduce that in the US? But what those people forget is that Denmark and the Netherlands, for example, they have super free markets. Like it's very attractive for businesses to operate here. Like personal income tax is very high. Like I, as an employee, pay a lot of income tax. But for businesses, it's actually super attractive to operate here. Like taxes are way lower. Um, Government incentivizes businesses to start up, but also to come into the country, like multinationals coming here. Um, and that's pretty funny because internationally, the Netherlands is seen as a tax haven, just like Ireland is. It's like super attractive for businesses to come into and just pay very little tax, operate without that many rules and restrictions. So, of course, we have like things people would consider more left leaning, more socialist, like free healthcare or practically free healthcare, like very cheap college, like college and university is like 2,000 euro a year here. Like that's capped by the government. Um, so those kinds of things are regulated, but at the same time, there's like very free markets for business to operate in. So I think that's what people that look at Europe as like an example forget. Like they just look at those things that are free, but they don't look why it's possible to operate that way. And that's because for businesses it's very attractive to come here.
Yeah, I just see. I didn't even know that stuff about the Netherlands, and I wouldn't because nobody here talks about that. All they talk about is the free healthcare, free education. It's so great. Um, but I would guess that the Netherlands is a pretty homogenous place.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, there's really like like i- like it is. It's no, you can't compare it to the US. Like that's just the US is basically like all these different small countries put together and called the United States. I think the United States would be more comparable to like the European Union. Like
Yeah,
there's all these different countries and together they're the European Union. And I think you should look at the US like kind of the same because it's all these different states with different values. Like California is way different from Texas or from Missouri, like all these, or Mississippi, like all these places. That's way different. Like you can't compare New York City to Oklahoma City. Like that's way different. Um, but here it's more homogeneous, like in the country at least. So I think you should look at it more of like the US compared to the European Union.
yeah, I would definitely agree. The U.S. is huge and super diverse. What's immigration like in the Netherlands? Like, is it easy for someone to come in and become a citizen, or do you know?
Yeah, it all depends on where you come from. If you come from a like obviously if you're from within the European Union, you can just move to the Netherlands and that's it. Like you get like a um like what's it called? Like a citizen ID. So like a number, social security number. You get a Dutch social security number, but you get to keep your Spanish passport, for example. Like I could just move to Barcelona now in Spain without any visa or whatever, just because I'm a member of the European Union. If you come in from outside of the European Union, it kind of gets trickier. They really look at, okay, where are you actually from? Like it'd probably be easier for American to get in than someone from Saudi Arabia. Like that's
Mhm.
probably going to be a difference there. But
Yeah,
I'd say it's easier, I'd say in general, than like me becoming a United States citizen.
yeah, it's kind of a weird thing over here, but I would definitely agree that the states are like the European Union. I can move to any state I want right now and not tell anybody, and it would be fine. Um, but there's like a political movement to like open borders here, and I just don't think people have thought that through. It's like, oh, let's look at these countries that have free healthcare and this, but let's ignore everything else about them, like how hard it is to move there. Like Switzerland, you have to have a college degree, you have to have like a certain amount of net worth and a bunch of other stuff. Like it's super hard to go there, and that's how most countries are. Like they don't just let anybody move in, and there's a reason for that. Like you can't have free healthcare and then just let anyone come get it. But for some reason, there's like a movement to do that here, and I I don't understand the motives besides wanting to get more votes. Like that's the only thing I can think of, because the eventual outcome of that is dismal, for the population.
Yeah, one thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is that for some reason, once people get to a place where where they feel privileged, then they start to feel guilty as well. So they start to feel guilt about their privileged situation. So if you live in the United States or if you live in the Netherlands, let me just speak for our country, you're super privileged compared to someone who grows up in, I don't know, Nigeria. And Nigeria is a pretty nice country in Africa. So let's say Congo or someplace else. Like you're super privileged. Like the standard of living we have here is like, it's incredible. But that also kind of brings around some guilt in people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if there's a term for it, but once people get too um, conscious of their privilege, they kind of start to feel guilty about it and want to change or kind of bring down their privilege or help people up uh, and bring them into the country, let's say. So like all these people, all these generations have built the United States and all these countries like up to where they are now. But now we start to feel guilty about our situation. Like we have it too well, or we're too privileged, or we have it like our standard of living is too high compared to these other people. So let's just let them in, and we all have like a great standard of living. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just another one of those surface ideas that sounds like like a fairy tale, right? Let's just open the borders. Let's have everybody in here. It'll be one big party. Like, but that's just not how it works.
Exactly. Yeah, I can see that like kind of guilt, and it it can combine with what Jordan Peterson talked about when he was a kid, how like you have this guilt, like, oh, I have it really good and other people don't. Let's get other people to change so we can fix it, instead of being like, what can I do to go help someone? And I think what a lot of people miss, and it's like you said, so surface level. It's like whatever they see on TV is what they're thinking about. But it's like, okay, there's a lot of people in the US that are super privileged, but there's a lot of people that aren't, that are struggling, that are just barely making it, getting by. And but people don't see them, they see the people in a different country that need help. And
Exactly.
if we were to open the borders and just let everyone come in, it might not hurt them very much, but it will hurt the people that are struggling way worse. And everything's super complicated. I heard a good analogy once, was like, why do you, if you believe in open borders, then why do you have a front door on your house, or why do you have a lock on your door? Go take the lock off your door. you know Let anybody come in your house. Oh, why wouldn't you do that? It
Yeah.
becomes obvious, of
Yeah, I
why.
think it's the same with privacy, right? I have nothing to hide. Okay, then tell me your bank account code. No, I won't do that. Okay, then tell me this, tell me that, tell me that, tell me that. No, I won't. No, I won't. No, I won't. So you do have something to hide. It's like the surface level. I have nothing to hide. Once you go deeper, then you realize, man, I really need my privacy because I do have certain things that I don't want to share with people. So, and I think that's the same analogy as the front door, right? I let these people come in. Like, I have nothing to fear from them. Like, let them just come in. And then, okay, now take off your front door. Well, actually, I do like my privacy. I do like the comfort of my own home. I do like the idea that it's just my place and not everybody else's. It's like, okay, get it now. But
Yep.
yeah, I think it's just like, it's just more popular to say, oh, let just anybody come in, free this, free this, free this, than to say, well, actually, if you go deeper, it's like, okay, well, ha ha ha. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just not popular to be a critical thinker.
Yeah. You can't, like, it's probably a lot of virtue signaling. Have you heard of that? Is like
Hmm.
seeking status for your ideas. And it's hard to get a broad respect from like critical thinking, because that means everyone else has to like really be thinking about it. But it's easy to just be like, we got to help these people, those other people are evil, yeah. It's just easy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think going back to polarization as well, like I feel like the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. Like, it's rarely ever on one side. It's rarely ever black and white. Like, it's usually somewhere in the middle.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just the same with these kinds of things. Like, okay, those surface level ideas, they sound right, but they're probably not the whole picture. Like, there's something behind them. Like, and I think not that many people actually take the time nowadays to critically think about those kinds of things, because it's usually an information overload, right? You go on your phone, you scroll through the news, you go through Instagram, like all these different kind of things you're bombarded by. You simply don't have the time to critically think about all those things and do your background research. Um, so that's why I personally choose to be more disengaged from politics and those things in general, because it can be a real time and energy suck to be invested in all those things, and then going back to my life, like what actually is the impact of all those things on me personally, and usually isn't that big. So why focus all my time and energy on things I can't control?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got a lot of respect for that. I mean, it's important. I don't think, humans are social animals. I don't know if we're born with the ability to critically think. Maybe we are, but we definitely have this like herd mentality. Some people call it mass psychology. Like, I did a podcast with my cousin the other day. He's super into psychology and free will and all this stuff. And I was like, if you were walking down the street and you turned this corner and you saw 100 people running down the street, it would be really hard not to turn and run with them. And that's just, it's natural in nature. You're running from predators or this or that, and so it's instinctual to want to go with the rest of the herd. And a lot of times it's the right thing to do. And we're raised, we have that inherent in us, and then we go through the education system and stuff. And I didn't even learn how to critically think until I took a college course called logic and critical thinking. And even after that, it was mainly through trying to run my own business that I really learned how to critical think, because I had to. I tried doing what I saw everyone else doing, and it didn't work. So, it's like, I don't, it's hard to get everyone to critical think or think critically. And that's why, the founding fathers of the United States, they made it a republic and not a democracy. Like Socrates, Aristotle, all these ancient Greek guys that studied democracy, they always said like the biggest fault is that you're letting the crowd make decisions, and the crowd is not informed or make thinking critically. And so the idea with the republic was, let's try to get people together that will think critically, and they'll be able to make better decisions. But they knew that the downfall would be when politicians got corrupted, which seems to be like an inevitable thing in every system eventually.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what's happening now. And I think everybody should do what you do. Just take a step back, think, okay, the truth is somewhere in the middle, and now let's just pay attention to what I can control.
Yeah, and I think it's also good to have people that look at the general picture, because if everybody was like me, then a lot of things would go unnoticed until it's too late. Like you're forced to see the result, and you're like, why didn't I see this sooner? Well, because you don't pay attention. Like I choose not to pay attention to those kinds of things, but I'm happy there are journalists and people out there that do pay attention to that kind of thing. Um, it's just a personal decision. Like it gives me a lot of inner peace not to focus on all that kind of stuff. Um, and going back to what you were saying about people and then being misinformed, like for some reason something popped into my head. Like there's this comedian, I don't know if his name, it's like George Carlin or
Oh
something,
yeah,
like the old
yeah.
guy. Like he said, people individually, like most people, if you speak on them one to one, are super nice, bearable, and all that kind of thing. It's like when you place them into a group, that's when shit starts to happen. Like that's when you start to hate people, get annoyed with people. Like it's rarely ever one-on-one contact with somebody that's annoying or whatever. It's usually when people get into groups that things go wrong. And obviously I'm not explaining it well, but like he did it in a way that's super funny, but that's also like there's some truth to it. Like if you think about it, when people, most people that you meet one on one are pretty like normal people, but once they get into groups together, that's when things start to happen, and that those things are not always positive. So
Yeah, that's literally what the study of mass psychology is about, is how behavior changes from the individual level to the group level. And the common thought is that people in a group will sink to the lowest common denominator. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense. And there must be something almost chemical happening that just kind of people just become super tuned in to the people around them to the point where part of their brain shuts off or something, you know?
yeah, so it's kind of forcing you not to think, or maybe not even forcing you, but it's just turning off that critical thinking part and just going with what everybody else is thinking because it's easier.
Well, yeah, you know, it makes sense. Like I grew up working construction, you know, with crews, with my dad, and like it still can happen today if I'm not paying attention. Like when I'm working with him, with my dad, and he's the one that thought through the job, he's running it, I'm just there to do my part. That part of my brain just shuts off because it's like, okay, you can't have two cooks in the kitchen. Like it would be detrimental to have two people trying to figure out a plan. We need one person to plan and the rest to follow. And so I think it's like a natural mechanism in our brains that's like, you can't have everybody critically thinking in a group or else nothing would ever get done. Like somebody has to lead and then the rest of the people have to follow. So we really need to make sure we pick the right leaders.
Yeah, exactly. But I think if that does happen, then mistakes are inevitable because, like, of course, things get done, but because it's one person's view and one person's plan, then there are bound to be mistakes. Like, of course, if you talk about it more with more people, it takes way longer and it might not even get done, but you might have figured out some risks or things that one person wouldn't be able to see that will prevent you from making a lot of unnecessary mistakes. So
Yeah.
also there, like there's probably a middle ground that you have to look for, because in plan A nothing gets done, and plan B things get done, but there are probably a lot of mistakes that could have been avoided if you went with plan A.
Yeah.
So
It's funny, we can look at examples of these different placements throughout the world. Like China, you've got the one leader everyone has to follow. The United States, it's a constitutional republic. So you have this document that outlines the basic rules, and then you trickle up leadership. So this person leads this small group, and then up here, and that's a hierarchy and separation of powers that's meant to make it so we're not reliant on any one person or entity, right? Um, those are the two examples I know the best. But that's the truth is in the middle, and I think it can work well, but I don't know if there is a perfect way to run a country with hundreds of millions of people. There's always like just the physical laws of nature make it so no people aren't equal no matter what you do. And you you can't force equality. I think that's kind of the problem with a lot of socialist and communist ideas is like we want equality at any cost, and it ends up really just fucking things up, I think.
And it's also like, I don't know if there's a like psychology, some like theory on this, but like most people usually, like I believe most people are selfish at their core. Like even if you help other people, then it probably because you gain something from it. Like even if it's just satisfaction or validation or whatever, or self-worth, maybe you get your self-worth from helping someone else. That's still selfish, not in a way that we're used to, but it's still to satisfy, even maybe unconsciously something or subconsciously, something in yourself by that's satisfied by helping others. And for more people it's more apparent maybe, so it's like, I'll take all the money, I'll take everything just for me and you don't get anything. Like that's more visible. But I think most people at their core are selfish, and like that doesn't work if you put them into a group and have them share everything, because everybody's going to look for what they can get. So I don't know how to express it very well, but I think that's also why those groups usually don't work, because everybody, there's always going to be that one selfish asshole that's going to ruin everything for everybody. So it's just
Well, I mean, at a certain level, there's no way to you know, escape, I guess, what you called selfish. But it's like, even if you go and volunteer at like a homeless shelter or something, you get some kind of satisfaction, some kind of benefit from that. Does that mean it was a selfish act? Is there a way to go do something on purpose that where there is no kind of reward whatsoever? I don't know. I think that's kind of the essence of behavior is there's some kind of reward for whatever you're choosing to do. Unless you're being forced to do something, then it is what it is. um
I think most of what people do is either to um, avoid pain or get pleasure. Like those are the two main motivators for human behavior, I think. And I think that's also well studied, that just like those are the main things. And if you look at what people do, it's usually one of those two. They either avoid pain or they want to get pleasure.
mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, maybe that's just a product of the fact that we are all like ultimately responsible for our own existence. It's like you have to make sure you don't get run over by a car. You have to make sure you eat, drink water. There's Unless you're like on life support, unconscious on a bed, like you have to provide for yourself. So that's it's like an inescapable thing or product of being a human. um, But let's switch gears a little bit because I want to hear about your podcast and stuff that you're doing.
Yeah,
So
sure.
your podcast is called Gritlab. Can you tell
Yep.
me, where did this come from? Why did you want to do this podcast?
Yeah, so it's kind of goes back a few years. Um, like I don't know when it was, but for some reason I started to read personal development books. So I think it was Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like for some reason I bought that book, um, and I read it, and it completely changed the way I looked at things. Like I was super young. I think it was 16 or 18. It's like, whoa, this is like some kind of, I don't know, kind of the Matrix, you know? You have this book that contains information and you're like, I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to know this. So it was all very exciting, and it kind of set me on the path of personal development and just then I bought other books and I started reading more and getting into it, and basically trying to better myself through personal development. And like my life grew exponentially. Like I was doing things that nobody my age was doing. Like I was getting projects done. I was winning all these. Like one time, I was doing an internship at a tech, like a high tech company that developed like all this kind of sensory technology. And I think I must have been 20, um, and they were basically a scale up company. So they had just gotten like a big investment of 3 million euros. And they were joining all these different international competitions where they pitched their idea and their business, and they were getting all this prize money. So they were winning all these, like, I think they won the Innovation World Cup. They won like all these like prestigious prizes. And I was doing an internship at that company, and my boss said, "Well, we're doing another one actually. It's like I forgot the name, what it's called, but it's basically one of the biggest high tech prizes in the Netherlands you can win. There's like 1,000 people there, all these CTOs, like super high level people, super smart, all have PhDs and master's degrees. And I was basically an intern at that company, and he told me, well, I can't make that pitch, so why don't you do it? I was like, sure. I remember the name. It's the International Micro Nano Conference. So, and I knew nothing about micro or nanotechnology, but I decided to say yes anyway. So I was like, sure, I'll do the pitch. I'll prepare with you, and we'll come up with a pitch. So we went, we went and prepared for that pitch. Nobody from that company was able to make it to the actual event, so I had to go by myself. So I just like I show up and I'm the youngest person there, like all these 50, 60-year olds, like all these PhDs. And I'm like, shit, like, oh, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. So I ended up pitching against 20 other people. Um, so I go up to the room where the pitches are being held. And like, I'm the youngest guy there. Like, I'm just 20-year-old, like super naive. I'm okay, let's do this. Let's do this. I can do this. I can do this. And then they ended up presenting the pitching order, and I was way at the back. Like I think I was second to last. So I was hearing all these pitches and presentations, and they were terrible. Like they were super boring, super technical. They had these PowerPoint slides with like pages of text on them, and I could just see the audience like they were smart people, or they were just all dozing off because it was so boring. And I had like when I first saw those presentations, I was like, damn, I have one slide. Like I have one image that I want to show, and like I'm just going to do the rest by myself. So like pitch after pitch went way over the time limit, like way too much text on the presentation. Like people just no energy talking about the high tech micro nano solution they made, like super boring. And then right before I was going up to the podium, like the host actually came up to me. He's like, yeah, I just heard that you were an intern at the company. Like, that's special. And I'm like, shit, like they weren't even supposed to know I was just an intern. So, so I go up and I do the presentation, and like I I was prepared. So I had a super nice story, quick and clean. I think it was 5 minutes, like a straight to the point, high energy, no presentation that people were looking at, because I wanted people to look at me and while I was doing the story. So I was doing the story, and I could actually see people sitting up and like, finally, this guy is just kind of refreshing, because I was like the 19th person to do their pitch out of 20. So I did a pitch, went very well. And, but like, I didn't expect anything out of it really, because I didn't talk about the technical side of the product at all. I was just talking about the company, the mission, what we were going for, and that kind of thing. So I actually, all the pitches ended, and I walked downstairs, and like right there in front of my eyes was like a check this big, and it said that we won that pitching competition. So I was
What?
like, man, I can't believe this. So I called the founder of the company. I'm like, yeah, actually, uh, we won, and he's like flabbergasted. He's like, I didn't expect that at all. And he's like, okay, once you go up to the podium, because there was like we were doing a pitch, I think, in front of 75 people, but the whole conference were like 1,000 people. So I had to go up again and talk about the company and accept the prize and everything. And he's like, okay, once you go up there, I want you to raise your fist in the air and just be proud of what you just did. So I did all of that, and I was riding the train back home because I didn't have a car or anything. It was just like a broke student that like a student travel card. So I was sitting there with like a check this big and like some flowers and everything. And like that moment really was like a turning point where it's like it doesn't matter how old you are, like if you're an intern or the CEO of the company, like if you're good at giving a presentation in this case, then people are going to listen to what you have to say. So, and that really sparked that personal development bug in me. Like, okay, if you really set your mind to that kind of thing, you really study how it's done and like connect with people, you can get anything done. So, which just started doing more and more of that kind of thing. So, like I graduated from college with like a degree in business innovation. Then I got a job and like quickly went up the ranks in the company, and I still work there. And I was doing all these kinds of things that people were looking at. And once they heard my age, they were like, how do you get all that done? And those were just the results. Like meanwhile in my life, I just felt very happy all the time. Like I have nothing to complain about. I really feel like I'm in control of my life as far as you can be in control of your life. Like I'm going to the gym, I'm healthy, I have great relationships, I have a great job that's basically tailored to my personality and my qualities as a person. So I have all these things going on that just make me very happy. And I was like, man, I want to talk about all these things I've learned over the past few years, and basically share them with people. Just share them with people that are interested in personal development. So that's why I started the Gritlab podcast with a friend of mine that I met in college. That's also super into personal development. So what we do is we interview like athletes, people in the military, people that are in business, so business owners, entrepreneurs, um, people that are more in the creative industries, so in the music industry, that all have a great story to share with people. So that have either done great things or have great lessons that they want to share. And we basically give them a platform and try and get those insights out of them and see and share them with our audience, which is basically people from around 18 to 35. Um, so it's more of a, man, I'm experiencing all these great things in life at this age, and I'm just very happy in general. So why not try and share that with other people, and see if they can get some value out of it? So yeah, that's basically how the podcast came to be.
Man, what an incredible story.
Yeah,
How
it's
old
pretty
are,
fun.
how old are you now?
I'm 23.
23. So that was only a few years ago.
Yeah.
Where's that company now? Are they still doing what they were doing?
Yeah, they're actually closing big contracts now with like insurance companies here and hospitals. So they're still going, which is pretty impressive for a scale-up company. So once I was there, like they weren't even doing that great. Like they were just a startup company, so they were always short on cash. But once I was there, they got that 3 million euros. So that was a really big achievement to them, and so it was also a fun time to be there. And I think at those kinds of places, you always want to look for somebody that's like the CEO. He gave me all the opportunities to like develop myself. So he wasn't like, oh, you're just an intern, so you're just going to get the coffee and stuff like that. He was like, okay, you can do anything you like. What do you want to do? I'm going to support you in anything you want to do. Um, so getting those kinds of people around you is also very important. And just developing so quickly as well, because I'm still super young, but I'm already doing like super fun things that most people like think you have to be 34 to do.
Totally. I mean, you've probably done more fun things than most people I know in their 30s. Um, what do you attribute that to? Like, did you seek out that CEO, or was it random circumstance that put you together? Like, what do you attribute this path that you're on to?
I think it's just, I believe very strongly in the compound effect. So, um, like it took some time to build up that kind of mindset. Like anything is possible if you really put your mind to it. So, um, that CEO gave a talk at our school once, and then a year later, I approached him. I was talking about his talk that he gave, and that it was very memorable, and that I wanted to do the internship at his company because of that talk. And then just being able to connect with people on that level. Like I wasn't approaching him with like my CV and like a motivation letter, like, can I please work at your company? I want to do my internship here, like most people would do. I just approach him like, hey, I like the talk you did there and there. Really, really memorable. Like I'd very much like to do my internship at your company. Can I come and drink a cup of coffee at your office and talk about it some more? He's like, sure. So it's like that really like all those years, like it sounds like a long time, but it's like for the past 6 years, all those moments like really build up to where I am now and um, what I feel like I can do and what I'm good at. So it's I think it's more of a you won't know you can do it until you do it kind of thing.
Hmm.
So I think if you put yourself in kind of a growth mindset, like sure, I might fail here and there and I might not get it done on the first try, but as long as I try, I might be able to figure out something I'm good at or get something done that I wouldn't believe possible. But you have to try. So that's always just always looking for growth, opportunities to grow, and then more opportunities flow to you. Like that's the fun thing, right? If you sit in your basement all day, nothing's going to happen in your life. But if you engage with life, things are going to happen in your life as well. Like things are, if you're aware of opportunities coming your way, like there's always going to be interesting people, there's always going to be interesting opportunities, there's always going to be interesting companies and things you can work at. But you have to stay, like you have to be aware of those kinds of things happening around you.
Hmm. It makes me wonder how many people like applied for that internship that you got. But it's certainly not the usual approach to hit the CEO up and compliment him on a speech he did and ask him to come enjoy a cup of coffee. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. But
Uh,
I think one of the main lessons I learned over the last few years is like it doesn't matter what title someone has, what they do, like their occupation. Like in the end, we're all just people, and we like people that are interested in us. So
mhm.
the CEO, I wasn't just talking about what he could do for me. I started with, yo, I really liked your presentation you did. And these are the things that stuck by which you said. So immediately I'm showing interest in him. And that's just a basic human thing that we like people that are interested in us. So like it's also being aware of like how people are and what they like. And so in that kind of thing, that sure I could have sent my resume and like a motivation letter, but like that you don't really stick out that way, and there's no connection between you and that other people, that other person, like regardless if it's a CEO of or like somebody else. It's just like a basic human interaction.
Yeah, 100%. It's like people are indoctrinated into this way of the world. Like, if you want to get a job, you got to fill out a bunch of applications, send your CV over, your resume, and hopefully you'll get an interview and blah, blah, blah. And it was really ever since I read The Millionaire Fastlane and got into that world of making shit happen for yourself that like I don't even have a resume anymore. When people are asking me for advice, like what should I do? It's like just find someone at the company and find a reason to be able to contact them about something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
What I really liked about the Millionaire Fastlane, it really engraved in me the idea of value creation. Like as long as you can create value in someone's life or in whatever, you're going to be valuable yourself. So like instead of going to a company and talking about, okay, you can do this and this for me, like that's what you see a lot. I want to do an internship at your company because I'd like to just develop these and these and these and these skills. um,
mhm.
and I'd like it because in the future I want to work with other companies in your field. Like it's all about me, 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 me. And that's how most people are. So instead of making it about you, try and make it clear what value you're going to provide to them. And that's something most people are willing to listen to. But those kinds of things, that's really a mindset change at the core. Like, so yeah, I think it's interesting to see how you gain that kind of insight over the years. Like that's not something um you ingrain in your life from one moment onto the next. Like that's something that takes practice.
Mhm.
um, I think that's also probably something you encounter as well in sales, for your business. Like you could talk about your solution all day long, but they're not going to care unless you show them how it's going to help them.
Yeah.
And most salespeople are talking about, oh, it has these features, and it's like, Rob did a video where he's like, okay, you can talk about the results, like the page will load 2.5 seconds faster than it usually would, like all these features and things, but tell me how it's actually going to help me or provide value for me. Like that's something that most people don't do. They just talk about like all these things that don't actually resonate with someone.
Yeah. And it's super weird too, because everybody's like that. Everybody's concerned with what affects them. And maybe it's like the lack of critical thinking, but if you just sat there for a moment, you're like, okay, everybody's selfish. So how do I get that person to do what I want them to do? I have to convince them that it's good for them.
Yeah.
And Grant Cardone talks about this in his book, Sell or Be Sold, that like children make the best salespeople because they just get this naturally. Like when your kid really wants to get you to give them some ice cream, they'll come and they'll ask for ice cream. You say no, they go away. They come back 5 minutes later and they're like, try, well, if, this will be good for you this way, they're just trying to show you and work you. And like, that's the way of the world.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind how many people I know that will just like, all they do is apply for jobs and they'll send their resume to 100 companies. But the thought of like looking at who works there and trying to find a personal connection is, they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not normal.
And it really changes your perspective, not just on business, but like I thought about this a while back. Like a lot of people are worried about what others think of them. So they're always thinking that everybody's thinking about them. Um, but if everybody thinks that way, then you don't have to be worried about what others think of you because they're only going to be worried about what others think of them. So like that takes away the whole anxiety of what other people think about you because most people don't care about you. Like that's a hard message, but most people are very much thinking about themselves. Um,
100%.
but it's kind of freeing in a way, because you have to be less worried about what others think of you. Um,
Absolutely.
so it's not just business; it's also in personal life, and I think that's a very powerful thought. Like once you get that concept, like it can really have an impact on your life, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what it did for me.
Yeah. If you can ingrain that, like I still get anxious sometimes when I'm about to call someone, do a sales call or something, but I just remind myself like, okay, I'm here to focus on them and their problems and help them. So if that's all I think about, then no longer am I worried about what they think of me. It also works for depression, is like, you know, I was like 19, feeling really depressed one day, and I was like, I figured it out. The secret is to just go do something for someone else, because you can't be depressed when you're thinking about helping somebody else. But
Yeah, that's
that
powerful.
that thought comes and goes.
Yeah, but also like let's say you're a very someone with social anxiety, so you don't like to go to parties or you feel awkward at going to parties. Like what usually happens is that someone really internalizes that fear and starts to talk about, okay, how can I prepare all these kinds of conversations with other people? So they put a lot of pressure on themselves to perform in a way. Like I have to be prepared for all these different conversations at those parties. Um, but why don't you just focus on what kinds of questions you can ask them? So instead of like, oh, what am I going to say if they ask me what I do for a living or what I like or what my hobbies are? Like I'm gonna shit, I have to prepare those answers. Like why not focus on asking other people questions and just let them talk? Like that takes a lot of pressure off of yourself and also makes people like you because that's just what humans are. They like people that are interested in them. And
Yeah.
that's something I learned from um, what's it called? Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. That he really goes into labeling and mirroring and like all kinds of questions and like human psychology. So he's basically a hostage negotiator. So his whole job was getting people out and negotiating and just trying to get the best outcome possible. When you think about it, just so simple. Like if you're worried about if you have enough to say, like let other people talk, and you won't have to worry about having enough to say. It's just
Yeah,
good.
totally. And it makes the world a lot more interesting too, because all of a sudden you're learning about all these other people and they're saying things that you surprise you, and it's just a lot more fulfilling than only thinking about yourself all day, you know. That could
Exactly.
be exhausting.
Sure can. So it's I think those kinds of things, and then like I read a lot. So I've always read a lot, like usually fiction, and then I started nonfiction, personal development kinds of books. Um, but you can have all the knowledge in the world, but it doesn't really work until you apply it. So I consciously started to apply the knowledge I'd learned um, from those books into my life. So never split the difference. It teaches you all these kinds of techniques on negotiation, and that's what helped me close like a $120,000 deal last year. All the techniques I learned in that book really helped me close that deal. Um, so that's also once you start applying it and getting those results, like not even results that big, but just like you see the results of it in your life, like that really reinforces that. Like I think MJ calls it like the feedback loop. So once you start applying something and you do it until you get feedback, like either positive or negative, and you readjust and you keep doing it, you keep doing it, the more natural it becomes and the more fun it becomes because you get better at it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
100%.
I think it all comes down to a growth mindset. Like if you have a growth mindset, like life can be one big adventure. Like it's just like I don't know what will happen in my life, but like I don't know. I'm excited. It's like it's just once you have that kind of mindset, then anything can be a learning experience. And I always have faith that new opportunities and things will come my way. So I don't know. It's fun.
Hell yeah. Cool. So $120,000 sale using some techniques you learned in Never Split the Difference. Can you talk a little bit about what some of those moments were?
Yeah, sure. So like I approached this client like in the beginning of last year, so like January 2020, and we were talking about okay, what kind of problem do you have? What do you need help with? And they were super like, okay, let's get a demo, let's get this solution in and everything. But like I could have gone along and I did. So I was like, okay, these people are super excited and they basically just want to get like an offer to fix their problem. So it's all smooth sailing, like it's super easy. So I sent them the offer and then I didn't hear anything back for like 2 months. So I was just calling them and like nothing. And then, but what I realized is I was just going along with them, but I wasn't asking them any questions because I was afraid of the answers. Like once you start digging, you might uncover some things that might kill the deal. So I was just moving along like all smooth sailing. But in the end, like I'd made them an offer without knowing their buying reasons. So that's when I really started to apply like the mirroring and labeling technique. So let's say um, you say, well, we have a problem with our internet. Your internet, like that's how you mirror people. So you basically repeat the last part of their sentence. And once you do that, people start explaining themselves more. So like that's how you dig deep in what people are actually thinking. So they were saying like we have this old program, and it's on a laptop, and if the laptop crashes, our whole system comes down. So I was like, your whole system comes down? It's like, yeah, we basically had that happen before. Like we had another company that had to come in and fix it. So we know it's super unreliable and it might result in like big fines for us. Big fines? He's like, yeah, there's all these rules and regulations, and like there's all these privacy laws that we're not abiding by at the moment. You're not abiding by any privacy laws. He's like, no, it's like so I just kept on digging and kept on digging, and it's super simple, and it's a technique that Chris Voss describes in the book. And then so he's like, we have a big problem with our privacy laws. And then you start to label what they're saying. So, well, it sounds like that's something you need to fix urgently. And he's like, yeah, like it's, like if we don't fix this soon, we'll have a big problem, like a big problem. Um, so it sounds like you're really looking for a solution. Yeah, we're really looking for a solution. Like, oh, so and that's called labeling. And those techniques are in the book. Like they're um, super like practical. You can apply them immediately. So that's what I did. And then there's also a few questions in there that helped a lot in closing that deal. So um, one of them is, what happens if you do nothing? Like that's great for triggering like those kinds of having people think about, yeah, what does happen if we do nothing. And then another one was something about like people that weren't in a meeting, like um, what are they looking for in this deal. And it's basically trying to uncover people that aren't at the table but do have a stake in the solution, trying to I think Chris describes it as deal killers. There's usually some things that are behind the scenes that you don't get to see, but that could kill the deal. So I really try to uncover those, like, and then like the standard sales question. So, okay, let's say we get a solution that solves your problem. Like, who's going to sign for it? Are you going to sign for it, or is it someone else? No, it's someone else. Okay, what does that person want in this solution? Like what's at stake for them? And really trying to dig out all those things. So I made that first offer. They declined it. They're like, well, it's too expensive, blah blah blah, all that kind of shit. So um, and then for a few months I didn't hear back from them. So like I was calling them basically every day. Like, I want to get them on the line, like I'm not going to give up. um, and then after a couple of months they came back and said, well, the problem is still there, obviously. So we really want to solve the problem now. Okay. So, but at that point, I knew everything about their situation. I knew that they had an old solution that was running on a license that was no longer valid. I knew they had that laptop crash before that was basically running the whole system. So I knew it was unreliable. I knew what their budget was. I knew who was going to sign for it. So at that time, I basically had everything I needed. And that's when I um, really went on closing the deal. So I'd say in the beginning of the year, I tried to close too quickly. And now I had everything I needed. So, but we ended up closing in December. So first talked to them in January and I closed them in December. And I think I must have called them like 50, 60 times without getting a response. So,
Wow.
but those like those questions, those that mirroring technique, that labeling technique, like those things are in a book that costs $8. So, and it helped me close that deal. So that's super powerful. Like once you realize that that kind of knowledge is at your fingertips, and if you can apply it, you get those kinds of results because they're based on like he's an FBI hostage negotiator. I think he'd been for like 20 years. So someone worked for 20 years and basically wrote all their life lessons, all their tips, techniques, and everything in a book that's $8. And you get to buy it and use them in not in a hostage negotiation, luckily, but like in a sales deal, and they work. So like that's just amazing to me.
Yeah. That story is amazing. And the techniques, I mean, you were just like explaining how it works, but every time you did mirroring, I felt compelled to like it was like, oh, I need to take action. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
It's a really powerful thing. Um,
Yeah, yeah. It's it's funny because he also has a master class. Like it's um, like a negotiation masterclass on masterclass.com. So there's actually an exercise in there where he explains how it works. So he hires an actor or an actress in this case that's just there that doesn't know what he's going to do. So the technique he's going to apply. And he's in there talking to her, and all he does is mirror and label. All he does for like 10 minutes straight. And at the end of that conversation, like he basically told her nothing about himself. Like he's just talking about her and mirroring and labeling everything she's saying. And at the end, he's like, so how did that feel? And she's like, yeah, I really got to like you. Like I really got to know you and everything. And he's like, but did you realize that I didn't tell you anything about myself? Basically, we were just talking about you. And she's like, wow, I didn't even know we were just talking about me. And all he did was mirror and label her. So it's super fun to see what that does to someone. Like she knows she's there in a negotiation masterclass. She could have read his book and everything. And she still, even though she knows she's in that environment, it still works because that's just human psychology and behavior. And it's just so interesting to put that into practice and actually see it work.
have you ever used those techniques in just like personal life?
No, I try to, but it's just unnatural for me. So let's say I talk to a friend, then I just fall back into my personal self. But I
Mhm.
really made it a conscious effort to use it at work. So I said, okay, once I go into these conversations, I write out everything in the book. So I have like a one sheet of everything in the book. So all the questions, the techniques and things. And I just held it side by side. So I was talking to the client, then looked on my other screen, and then, just try and see how it worked and just practice. But I don't really use it in personal life.
Mm-hmm.
But
That,
it's like um, because there's like kind of specific techniques. But I think in personal life, it's great to ask people questions in general. Like that's just being interested in somebody. Like I could just talk about myself all day long, but like um, yeah, I think in general, it's nice to just ask people questions. I think
yeah,
that's just, you know,
that's how I am. Like I even get annoyed sometimes, and it's silly, but like I'll hang out with people and I'll just naturally not mirror and label, but I'll ask a ton of questions. And at the end of the hangout session, I know everything that's going on with them, but they don't know anything that's going on with me. And
yeah,
it's like, dang it, they don't even know what I've been up to for the last 5 years.
exactly.
So it's
Yeah, it's
interesting. But I've listened to that book, but I never finished it. But definitely gonna take a second look now. And
yeah,
it just sounds kind of fun, you know, because sometimes like I'm kind of an introvert, so sometimes it takes energy to be around people, but these might make it easier to break the ice and get the conversation flowing even when I don't really feel like it.
yeah. The fun thing is that while you're doing it, know that the other person is actually feeling like you're listening to them, and like they're getting to know you without you telling them anything, basically. And it's that's also really strange, like, to get your head around. Like, I'm not talking about myself, but I'm still building a connection with this person. Like, how does that work? Like, how can they connect with me if I'm not telling them anything about myself? But the fun thing is, you don't need to. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
just,
it makes, like we were talking about earlier, it's like everybody's inherently selfish.
yeah.
And that's what this is all about is, you don't gain a connection with somebody by talking about yourself. Like people like people that are interested in them, you know?
Yeah, but that's why I find it kind of strange that you're an introvert, because at the summit, like, you had all these conversations with people, and just me meeting you, like, I immediately felt like we had a great connection. Like, just like no effort at all. Like, just you were interested in me and everything. Like, I would never have guessed that you're an introvert. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I measure it is it takes a lot of energy. So like at the
Mm.
end of those days at the summit, I like went and laid in bed and just like was completely drained, you know? And after we were there for a while, by the end of the trip, like, I could have done that forever. If we just stayed there in Scottsdale, that would have been great. But, when I did get home, it was definitely like, it took a lot of effort.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think one of the main things that also really that I found really inspiring, that at the end of the summit, you really said, okay, I'm going to make some changes in my life. And you really did. Like, you really learned something from that experience, and you actually put it into practice. Like, that was also great to see. Like, I think a lot of people go to the summit and then experience a lot of things and then go right back to what they were doing. But I feel like you were really there with a purpose and get clarity on things. You got that clarity and then put them into practice once you get back home.
yeah, it was it was like a turning point in my life even before the summit. Like things were kind of coming to a head, and I Casey and I had been traveling for a few years, and now all of a sudden we're like back in our hometown, like living in one spot. My business wasn't doing that great, and I was actually interviewing for web developer jobs just because I was like, well, my business isn't making that much, but I can go make 100 grand a year just coding.
Yeah.
And then, so by the time I went to the summit, it was like already like a soul searching thing.
Yeah.
And then being around all these people that I felt like I had so much in common with everybody. Like, like when Game came up and introduced himself to me, he was like, you know how Game is. He's like so genuine. He comes up and he's just like looking into my eyes and he's like, I read your progress thread, X, Y, and Z. How are things going with that? And I was like, here's this guy I've never met, and he knows more about what's going on with me than like anybody I know in real life.
Yeah.
And it was like at that moment, it was like, okay, there's some special connections going on here. Like, gotta make the most of it. And I don't know, for some reason I found it really easy for pretty much everyone I met there because
Yeah.
I was just inspired by everybody, how everybody came from all over the planet to be at this event, just to stand around and talk to each other until 2 in the morning, like, is pretty cool. And
But how
so
do,
I couldn't, when I got home, I couldn't undo that. It was like, okay, I'm planning on seeing these people again in a year. I'm not going to have the same problems I have this year.
so how do you feel like your life has changed since the summit?
I would say the biggest thing was just doubling down on entrepreneurship and going all in on it. And that's been a process. Like it's taken me pretty much the last year to really go all in on my business. So that was a huge thing. And just the connections. Like I said earlier, I kept in touch with a lot of people I talked to like every single day. And so just having those people in my life. And I also figured out this year how to leverage like accountability. Like I'm the kind of person, if I tell somebody I'm going to do something, like it hurts really bad if I let them down. Whereas it's really easy to let myself down. So I'll like make promises to people knowing that it's going to force me to like have to do stuff that I probably wouldn't end up doing. So that's been a big help.
Yeah, that's great. Like, and that's incredible. Like it's only been a year. So when you think about it, really, like it felt like it was way longer ago. Like the summit to me at least felt like all the changes and all the mindset changes, and then having you guys as friends, and like I I assume you got the wedding invite from Bradley.
Yep.
Like ma- we met him a year ago, or at least I did, and now we're going to his wedding like next year. Like that's just crazy to me, but I'm so thankful that we got that opportunity. And then also um just like I remember that I read The Millionaire Fast Lane like a while back, like a few years back. And then like in 2019, I finally decided to sign up for the forum because I read it in his book and I was like, well, might as well check it out. And then I saw that there was a summit going on. So I immediately bought a ticket without thinking. Like I wasn't even sure. I was just excited. So let's just go. Then I saw Rob's post about like a summit house. So people coming together in an Airbnb. I didn't know Rob. So I sent him a DM. I was like, hey, Rob, um, I want to join the summit house and let me know. And didn't get a response. So I think I actually used one of the techniques in Never Split the Difference to get a response out of Rob. So this is fun. Now I think back of it. I was like, there's a technique. I think it's that book that is like basically like if you don't get a response from somebody, use this sentence. It's like, hey, have you given up on this project? Like that always invokes a reaction, because if people haven't given it up, they're just like, I don't have time for it right now. They will respond to let you know that they haven't given up. So I think I sent Rob a DM like, hey, have you given up on this idea? And like, that's when I got a response. And that's when I got in a WhatsApp group with you, Jordan, and Rob. That's when I sent Rob like 500 euros through PayPal. I was like, let's just see, let's just see where it ends up. And like, that's how it all came to be. And now we have this great group of friends, and we're going to a wedding next year. So it's just like so crazy how your life can change in a year.
Yeah, it is crazy. And all those little decisions you made happened so quickly, you know? It was similar for me. It was like I got on the forum back in 2017, and I think they did a summit that year, but then in 2018 they didn't. And I was like, dang it, I really wanted to go. And so in 2019 when they released the tickets, like I had my alarm set for the moment that they were going to release them, and I bought it like right away, no questions asked. And the summit house was like absolutely 100%, just like all in. I'm all in. Whatever happens, I'm just all in automatically with no expectations. I did not expect it to be such a great experience or to come away with like such good friends at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what made that event so special, is that's how a lot of people were with it. It was like they didn't know what it was. They just knew they wanted to be a part of it, and they took the risk and just dove in. And so you had all these people, like when we went on that hike with Steve, all these people and tons of cars getting out, standing around like, oh, we're going to go hike this mountain. Okay. Is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, that was a great moment. Like, I remember when I got at the Airbnb, you guys weren't there, you were out. So I had to type in the code, and then I went straight to bed because I flew in from Amsterdam. So my jet lag was all over the place. I wasn't feeling very energetic, let's say. So, and then I remember Jordan saying, you were banging on my door like in the evening, like, let's go out, let's go out. And I was just like in bed, totally sound asleep. But then the next morning, like, you guys came down one by one, and that's the first time I met you guys. So that was also super strange. But like the first thing we did was climb Camelback. Like the first thing we did was like climb a mountain together. And I think that's also something very special about it. It's like so genuine, like, oh, nice, you're here, let's do this together. And just, I immediately felt like I'd known you guys for way longer than I actually did. So there's
Mhm.
something special about that event.
Yeah, it reminds me of other like intense bonding experiences. Like I wasn't in the military or anything, but I can imagine like being in a little platoon and getting dropped into another country, and then you do everything with these people. Like you get super bonded. And it was similar for all of us. Like we landed in this foreign place with knowing nobody, but we had like this core group that was like, okay, we're just gonna do everything together. And it really helped that a few of you guys are extroverts and a few of us use techniques to get more people around us. So yeah, you're not going to beer and pancakes, are you?
No, I think I can't even fly out of the country now. So,
Oh,
but then I was planning on going, but like the situation now is just too uncertain. So, and I have to save up now for next year because all the Dominican Republic trip is going like in March. But then Jordan mentioned like, imagine if there's a summit in February. Like, are you going? I was like, damn it. Of course I want to go, but that means like I'm not going to fly to the summit and then fly back to the Netherlands only to go back to the Dominican Republic a few weeks after. So I was like, man, maybe I have to go to the summit and stay in the US for like a month and then fly out to the Dominican Republic and just like, so that's what I've set my sights on now. Like with everything going on now, I don't see anything happen really like really exciting or whatever anytime soon. So I'm just really looking forward to that trip next year and just saving up my money to go.
heck yeah. Yeah, I kind of forgot about Bradley's wedding because it's like so far out. um, but yeah, this whole year, that's another thing I think that's made that whole experience, the summit experience, extra different, is that we were all there like right at the beginning of the COVID thing. And even remember thinking like, oh boy, we're in a huge crowd of people, what if I get the virus? And then as soon as I got home, it was like full on. And so that was like the last normal week that I had was that week. So,
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. There was somebody in front of your window behind you.
oh really?
Yeah, they looked in twice.
Oh, it's probably Casey.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we're supposed to go for a walk.
Well, we've been talking for like 2.5 hours, so
I know. Well, I guess we should wrap it up, but just want to say thank you for doing this. This conversation's exceeded my expectations for sure. And
cool.
I really enjoyed hearing some of those stories,
Yeah, I have
especially,
plenty more.
especially the one about the intern presentation. that's
Yeah,
that's remarkable.
yeah, that's a fun one. I have plenty of more to share, so we'll get together another time and I'll share some more. That's
Absolutely.
always fun.
Do you
But
have
yeah, huh?
do you have any plans for doing Gritlab podcasts in English?
Yeah, I think we will. So I want to get you on there. I want to get Rob on there. Like, just I think it's why not try it? Maybe there's an audience there. Maybe I like the experience. Just I think it's a fun opportunity. So why not?
Yeah, that would be fun
So
to get the mastermind group together just to talk about the summit week and all the things that happen.
yeah, so I look forward to getting you guys on.
Awesome.
And I appreciate the opportunity just to get on your podcast as well. Like I really like just talking to you in general, but it's fun. Like the 2.5 hours flew by. So thanks for the invite.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime we'll have to do it again for sure.
Cool. And we'll talk again in two days anyway. So
Yep. All right, man. Well, it's nighttime there, so have a good rest of your night.
thank you and enjoy your walk.
Thanks. All right, I'll see you later.
Yeah. Talk to you. Bye.